In the last video, I shared some techniques to help you think differently about the drawdown of your retirement savings. In this video, I'm going to share an approach that could lead to you potentially retiring much earlier than you ever thought possible. Then at the end of the video, once you understand this approach, I'll share a tool that I've used for many years that will enable you to model your own retirement and find out whether retirement is just round the corner for you. And if you're a regular viewer, fear not. Sarah will be back next week. She's currently up in bed recovering from various viruses. Don't know which one anymore, to be honest. But you and I have got a lot of studying to do. So what we're going to do today is we're going to head to a university campus here in Chiang Mai so we can all get ourselves in the right headspace. So come with me. It's absolutely lovely biking around here in Thailand. Once you're off the main roads, that is, in Chiang Mai. It's beautiful, little places by the side of the road to get food or maybe a smoothie. And you just see all the local people getting ready for their day. Still early yet. You're really seeing how Chiang Mai operates and starts its day. This video is basically in 3 parts, and they operate together as 3 jigsaw pieces. So basically, once you have all 3 of those pieces, it gives you what you need to know to look into whether there is a potential for you to retire earlier than you had imagined. And once you've got all that information, that's really where the fun begins. That's where you can start modelling and trying out different things. Welcome to Payap University here in Chiang Mai. So retirement is when you start your wealth depletion phase of your life. Up until then, you've actually been in your wealth creation phase, and a lot of confidence comes from receiving a regular paycheck. So I want you to imagine this scenario. Assume you've just retired. Wonderful, you know. You haven't got to answer to anyone anymore. Everything's good in the world. But you go past your first month and it feels a bit weird. I know, because I've been there. It feels weird when the day normally your salary hits your bank, nothing comes in. And then a few days later, you're actually writing a check to yourself and transferring money into your checking account so you can live for the next month. That feels a little bit weird, to be honest. Certainly for the first time anyway. And then everything's okay, you plan for this, it's all good, and you are driving down the road one day in your car and your head gasket blows. Oh my goodness, head gasket. That happened to me once on a car, and it cost me 3,000 quid, 4,000 US dollars to fix. Now when that happened to me before, I was working, I was in my wealth creation phase, and it was really painful, but I knew in a couple of months I've got money coming in. It's not the end of the world. Imagine now you've retired, you're paying yourself. How does it feel having to pay 3 or 4 grand out for a head gasket on your car? And also remember, the longer you get into retirement, the more ailments you're going to have, and you might be spending out more and more on medical issues. That feels difficult, believe me. You need to decide what your phases of retirement are. Actually put some time and effort into thinking about this and working it through with a pen and paper. And as I've said previously, if you're in a partnership, if you're married or you've got a significant other, this is a team sport. No assumptions should be made here. Don't assume you might be the money person of the relationship and you're thinking, well, do you know what? By the time we're 80 years old, we're not going to be spending any money. Assuming that your partner thinks the same way. They might be assuming that when they hit the age of 80, that's where then they're going to get on the QE2 and do a world cruise costing 50 grand or something. So you sit down together and think about your phases. So I'm here at Payap University and it's just turned 8 AM. They've got their own radio station, you can see up here, and they're playing the national anthem of Thailand. How cool is that? I like that. So project forward you must. Your retirement might last 10 years. Your retirement could last 60 years. So break it down into manageable chunks. For Sarah and I, we broke it down into chunks of 10 years. That's why, if you're new here, you won't know this, but all of our regular viewers do. We are planning to travel the world for 10 years. And we sold everything we own to do exactly that. We're a year down. So far, we've been in 4 continents and 6 countries. And goodness knows where the next 9 years will take us. But that was the first step of our plan. And layering on from the last video, this is another area where the 4% rule really is a blunt instrument, because it assumes that we all have a linear retirement. That is to say, what we spend on day 1 of retirement will be the same as what we'll spend on the last day of our retirement, assuming we have the same needs throughout. But if you think about it, that simply isn't the case, is it? What you're going to do if you retire at 50 or 60, you've still got a lot of vitality. So what you're going to be doing with your time at that age is going to be very different to what you're doing at the age of 110. I hope you make it to 100. Well, I hope you make it to 110 if you want to live to 110. I don't think I want to do that. I don't think Sarah wants me to do that, actually. The second of this 3-piece jigsaw is you need to understand what your spending profile will actually be in each of these phases of retirement. And this is where I'd like to introduce a tool that you've possibly never heard of before. And this is called the Bernica Reality Retirement Plan. Bernica's Reality Retirement Plan is something that you should investigate and study. And this is actually a key point of everything we talk about in our videos, being live an intentional life. I'm giving you food for thought. That's all I'm doing here. What you need to do is go away and research. This isn't financial advice. No one sat down and told me this stuff. I had to research it in detail, and you've got to research it too. Don't take anything blindly from some bloke walking around some university, will you? And when it comes to Bernica's Reality Retirement Plan, through his studies, he found that actually retirement spending reduces every year from the age of 56 through to the age of 76. And it reduces by a relatively large percentage, 2 to 3% per year. So this is another area where you can see with the 4% rule might not be right for you. And with all this stuff, you've got to apply your own life to it. So for example, Bernica says from the age of 56 to 76, we start to reduce our spending. Well, I'm 53 at the moment, and that is to say that in just 3 years we're going to be reducing our spending. Well, actually, I don't think that's how our life is going to be, because we are traveling the world for 10 years. So I need to apply my own life to this, and that takes you back to jigsaw piece 1 about really thinking about what your retirement looks like. And when you're looking at these spending phases of your retirement, you need to look at positive financial events that can occur for you, such as at a certain age, you will start to draw down on Social Security or the old age pension or whatever you have in your country. So you need to factor in exactly how much money that will be, because that will reduce the drain on the retirement savings that you've made for yourself. But I can only ever really understand things with the aid of examples. So let's apply an example now. We're going to apply me and Sarah. We're the example that we're going to help you understand this whole Bernica thing and how drawdown changes over the years. So phase 1 for us, well, we're in it at the moment. That's that 10 years of retirement travel, basically. We're 1 year in, and we are in Thailand at the moment. And we don't really know where we'll be after this, and that's the beauty of this plan for us. And if you want to see what scrapes we get into as we travel the world over the next 10 years, why not consider subscribing and checking that little bell to be notified when we release more content. But that's our first phase of retirement. And so for us to phase 2, well, phase 2, that's where we're going to be slowing down a little bit, and we're likely to be settling into 1 or 2 countries of the year. What we're doing is this first 10 years, we're almost treating it like a house hunt in some regard. And that's basically, we're going to different parts of the world and thinking, is that a place that we could settle in and spend a lot more time? And then at the end of the 10 years, as I say, we'll settle in 1 or 2 locations and bounce between the 2. And you might be thinking, blimey, well, I'm not that wealthy to own 2 properties. Well, I don't own any property. And this is another wonderful thing for us. What we can do is look at things and say to ourselves, well, we're going to rent a place here for 6 months, then rent a place there for 6 months. So that's probably the second 10 years of our retirement. And because we're not going to be travelling at quite the same pace as we are now, we will likely be wanting holidays then too. So I would imagine that our costs when it comes to travel will increase because we'll want those holidays. We've actually factored an increase of 20 to 30% per annum on the money that we spend in our second phase of retirement. And then on to the third phase. Well, this is when we really do expect to be slowing down. We're now, in our eyes, old people. And we're probably going to be spending the majority of our time watching Homes Under the Hammer and A Place in the Sun on TV. And as such, we're not going to be moving around much. We're not going to need much. And this is another thing for you to think about for yourself, is if you're living in a big house in the country somewhere, that takes a lot of cost. And that impacts your retirement, to be honest. So could you, in that phase, such as when you're in your mid to late 70s to 80s, would that be a time where you downsize maybe and get an apartment right in the centre of town, has all the services on your front doorstep, and then you don't need a car, because cars are a massive drain on your finances, because everything you need is right there, and you've got friends in the apartment building you're staying in. That's the kind of thing we're thinking about doing. And as such, we're expecting our third phase of retirement to be 33% cheaper than phase 2. That's what we modelled for ourselves. Phase 3 of retirement is somewhat indeterminate. We have looked at phase 1 being 10 years, phase 2 being 10 years, phase 3 could be a lot longer, could be a lot less. But when we move on to our next phase of retirement, in this one, this is considered to be the most restful and the most cost effective, and depending on what you believe, can potentially last an entire eternity. So we're not necessarily looking forward to that one, but that's a phase that we're planning for too. So now you've got those first 2 elements of this video. Going to move on to the third element. And the third element is to put some actual costs alongside these. Put those costs alongside in today's money. So put down phase 1. We expect to spend, for example, $40,000 US per year. And do it with a bit of a straw man budget around it too. Don't just write a random number down, because that means you're not invested in it. Think about what your bills will be. Think about what you'll be doing with your time. Are you going to travel the world like we are? Or are you going to be doing 4 holidays a year? If so, where? And spend some time looking at hotels or apartments, or the kind of things that you'll be doing to start to build out that rough amount of money that you'll need in each phase of your retirement. And in so doing, you'll have a much better fix on your money than I would say 95% of people that enter into retirement. A lot of people enter retirement not knowing what they're going to do with it and how much money they need to spend to make it happen. And actually, because of that, people tend to go into stages where they're scared to spend, such as times like now where inflation's going up and stock markets are going down, and that gives people fear. But if you know your plan and you know your investment strategy, you know your investment strategy, then you can alleviate a lot of that fear, because you know what you had down to do in the first instance. Important to note here, I'm not telling you what to do. Listen, you do you, I'm doing me. We all do our own things in life, don't we? We think that traveling the world is amazing. It's the dream. And if you look at our videos, you'll find that this is not an expensive thing to do. We did a video a few weeks ago showing how much we spent in our first year of travel. So I remember when I was younger saying, when I retire, I'm going to save as much money as possible and travel the world, assuming that meant you need like 100 grand a year to hop on a big ship and travel around the world. Life isn't actually that complicated. This is potentially not for you. What is it for you? Once you know what that is, you can apply these numbers to it. I said at the beginning of the video that at the end I'll share a tool that will help you pull all this together. Now, the tool has been around for a long time and is a complicated tool. When you first look at it, it's very kind of Web 1.0. But if you've done your homework first, you've done your maths, you know how much from the last video we produced, you're going to have a better idea of how much you're going to save. And through today and looking at things like the Bernica Reality Retirement Plan, you have a better view of what your retirement plan will be through until you get that last phase of retirement. Then it will help you to use this tool much easier. So the tool is called firecalc.com. I'm not sponsored by Firecalc. I have no relation. I don't even know who owns it. It's well spoken about in the fire community. People speak very highly of it. Its data is trustworthy. Get in there and have a play around. I still have a play around now just for fun. So yes, we travel the world. It's very easy to get Instagrammy on that kind of stuff and make everything look wonderful and beautiful, but believe me, we stumble along the way. And in the next video, you're going to see that we've had a very big stumble, which has actually affected how we think about our travels going forward. It really is changing things. And we recommend you watch that next.